Discover how one little girl's touch inspired a CEO to change everything for 1 million hearts. David Reyes couldn't shake the feeling that he was losing more than just sleep. At 45, he was a titan in the health tech world, with a lavish office that overlooked the bustling city of New York. Yet as he scanned through the emails that had accumulated overnight, an unfamiliar tightness settled in his chest. This wasn't just stress. It was something deeper. He attended meetings where spreadsheets danced with profits and ominous red flags dripped with discontent, but as he lay awake each night, questions gnawed at him. Was success worth the emptiness it brought? Each interaction felt staged, devoid of authenticity. The faces that filled his boardroom were mere echoes, shadows of who he used to be. He was a man revered for his business acumen yet cursed with a history of missed family moments. Sacrifices masked as necessity now haunted him relentlessly. Then one morning, scrolling aimlessly through social media, he stumbled upon a heartwarming feature showcasing a bright, imaginative 8-year-old named Sarah, transforming the Maplewood nursing home with her colorful murals and stories that danced in the air like autumn leaves. Her laughter resonated through the article, and a flicker of something long forgotten ignited in David's soul: hope. As the days went by, David thought about Sarah and how she connected with those so often neglected by society. He felt an ache grow in his chest, piercing against the backdrop of his corporate success. With every passing moment, he wrestled with the gnawing urge to create a platform that reconnected families with the elderly, but his mind fought back hard. The board would never agree to it. Their eyes were set solely on profits. They saw his vision as folly, a waste of resources, a whim. The dichotomy was suffocating. Would he cozy up to his conscience or pledge allegiance to avarice? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. A storm brewed within him as he became more enmeshed in Sarah's world. The memories of Mr. Jenkins, the lonely war veteran she spent afternoons with, flashed in his mind. He could imagine the yellowed photographs resting in the veteran's dwindling collection, each one a marker of a life lived yet slipping ever further into anonymity. The fear of making a wrong move clenched his heart like a vice. Could he truly redefine success when the boardroom rattled with voices eager to drown out compassion for quarterly gains? Would he be able to resist the tidal wave of ambition that threatened to carry him away from a path filled with real purpose? Each thought sent David spiraling deeper into internal conflict, every choice feeling like a tightrope walk above an abyss of doubt. As he prepared to present his vision to the board, a vision inspired by a little girl in Maplewood, the pressure mounted. Would they support his new direction or betray not just their interests, but his ethics? Just then, a message notification shattered the fragile focus he had been gathering. It was a contract for a high-stakes deal that would push his company into the spotlight, but at what cost? David's breath quickened as he stared at it, the weight of the decision flooding his senses, leaving him at an uncertain crossroads. What would he choose, and who would pay the price? The weight of the decision pressed down on David like a tangible force, his heart racing anew as he wrestled with the implications of that contract. It was a lucrative opportunity, one that could elevate his company to dizzying heights. Yet, the glimmer of potential success felt tainted when juxtaposed with the idea of abandoning his vision for something more meaningful. The question loomed large: could he really walk into that boardroom and challenge everything? He paced around his office, each stride echoing the turmoil coursing through him. With every step, his internal debate intensified. Who was he trying to impress? The board members, with their suits and ties, seemed to be locked in a world where profits ruled over the human spirit, a world he had once proudly occupied. Yet with Sarah's laughter still ringing in his ears, that world felt increasingly hollow. They knew nothing of love or joy, only spreadsheets that mattered more than the people behind them. David paused at the window, staring down at the city below. This was his kingdom, skyscrapers piercing the sky, people hustling on the sidewalks, each life a story pent up in a body rushing from one task to another. How many of those people had someone waiting at home, curious about their day? More importantly, how many were forgotten? Like Mr. Jenkins, lost in a sea of busy existence, his mind began to reel, identifying the deeper draw to Sarah's project. It wasn't merely the idea of connecting families with their elderly loved ones. It was the necessity of vulnerability, of choosing compassion in a world where empirical success threatened to smother the pulsing heart of humanity. David clasped his hands tightly, his knuckles whitening in a desperate bid for a solution that aligned with his newfound convictions. That he recalled his childhood dreams, the aspirations that had led him away from his hometown and into the world of cutthroat corporate engagements. "You can't change the system if you're absorbed by it," he whispered to himself, as the quiet truth settled heavily in his chest. Perhaps he had a responsibility to do more than just be a profit-generating machine. Perhaps his role as CEO could shift from just financier to a harbinger of change. The realization imbued him with a new sense of determination. He could no longer be the passive recipient of external expectations. He would carve his own path, even if it meant a confrontation with the board he had served for years. The thought of sharing his vision, unabashedly emotional and full of humanity, filled him with excitement and terror simultaneously. Just then, a feisty spark ignited. He reached for his phone and pulled up the presentation he had been crafting in secret, a presentation that wove together metrics of potential gains alongside stories about reconnecting lives. He flipped through slides, envisioning the faces of the executives who would hear his pitch. Some would sneer, dismissing his ideas as a distraction from their goals. Others might be intrigued, willing to listen to this unexpected evolution of their leader. David inhaled deeply, shaking loose lingering doubts. This was it. The moment when he would have to face their skepticism head-on and discover just how far he was willing to go for the sake of his ideals. He had to prepare for the inevitable objections, their doubts mirroring his own burgeoning fears. But beneath that, there was excitement, a chance to rewrite the rules, to share the true essence of what success could look like. As he stared into the glowing screen, feeling the pressure of countless eyes upon him, it became clear to him, taking this leap of faith could either fortify his values or obliterate them. With a swift motion, he pressed send and set the term for the board meeting. The decision made, he braced himself for the challenging path ahead. Would his fellow executives ultimately support his endeavor, or would they sever him from a vision that could forge not just profits, but purpose? A sudden shiver of doubt ran through him, reminding him of the stakes involved, as he whispered to himself what he hoped to be true, maybe the chance for 1 million heartbeats was worth risking everything. The night before the board meeting, David's sleep was restless, plagued by surreal dreams of defiance and unexpected backslashes. Each time he closed his eyes, he envisioned himself in the boardroom, standing at a podium, presenting a furious blend of profit margins and heartfelt stories. But with each scenario, the atmosphere thickened, charged with tension and judgment. Deep inside, he felt the weight of uncertainty. Would his colleagues understand, or would they see his words as a betrayal of their business creed? As dawn broke, he awakened with resolve, but it was accompanied by an undercurrent of suffocating anxiety. He poured himself a cup of coffee, fingertips brushing against the cool ceramic as he stared vacantly out the kitchen window. The rising sun cast a warm glow, illuminating everything it touched, yet uncertainty loomed within him like a heavy haze. A familiar face appeared in his mind, the new intern, a young woman named Leah who had been advocating for a more human-centered approach to their practices. Leah had a spark, an unwavering belief that businesses could prioritize compassion without sacrificing success. Her audacity had ignited a flicker of hope in him, a reminder that vulnerability could be a strength rather than a weakness. Perhaps it was time to engage with her insights more fully. It could serve as a pivotal point for his approach to the board, a tangible example of generational courage and creativity that he desperately needed to harness. David decided to contact her. She answered his call with unmistakable enthusiasm, and he found himself grinning as he orchestrated their meeting, framing it within the context of the upcoming pitch. "Let's brainstorm together, Leah," he said, only half-consciously aware that he was enlisting her courage to buttress his own. "I want to include some real stories in my presentation, stories that resonate beyond the spreadsheets. As they sat across from each other in a quiet corner cafe, Leah's eyes sparkled with energy as she dove into her thoughts. You know, David, people don't connect to numbers. They connect to stories. You should share real experiences like how aging impacts families. Imagine someone at the board meeting hearing a personal account about a daughter who felt isolated from her mother in a nursing home. That emotional punch. She leaned forward, her passion electrifying the air. It could shatter the confines of our current strategy. Inspired by her words, David's vision began to crystallize. He realized that Leah's perspective provided the conduit through which he could channel his conviction during the presentation. Scaling the business could be achieved without sacrificing the humanity it intended to serve. He felt the embers of clarity ignite within him, illuminating a path full of stark contrasts between profit and purpose, between isolation and connection. Later that evening, as he began to finalize his slides, something shifted within him. The tremors of anxiety were replaced with burgeoning excitement. He imbued each slide with stories and statistics, converging them into a narrative that celebrated both the heart and the numbers. Each detail mattered, intricately woven to demonstrate an alternative business model predicated on family and love, one that could unite their objectives rather than fragment them. As the clock ticked closer to the meeting, David felt a stirring responsibility, as though the burden of this transformative vision had a life of its own. He had felt isolated in his aspirations, but now, fueled by the insights of someone generations removed, he understood clearer than ever, real change could emerge from unexpected alliances. The time was drawing near, the countdown to confrontation loomed overhead. What if the board rejected him outright, dismissing both his vision and passion? David clenched his jaw, repeating to himself that fear was simply the precursor to bravery. As he closed his laptop and rehearsed his pitch in front of a mirror, a mantra cascaded into his thoughts: this is more than just a pitch. Determined and trembling, he was ready to crush the expectation that a CEO could not lead with heart. As he stepped into the boardroom, preparing to unveil his vision, the stakes felt unimaginable. What would they say when they truly realized the power of a narrative woven with purpose? David stood at the entrance of the boardroom, the polished surface of the long table reflecting his anxious expression. He took a deep breath, gathering his thoughts, letting the adrenaline surge through him. The room was filled with the familiar faces of his colleagues, their piercing gazes reminding him of the weight of this moment. Each one had a reputation to protect, an ideology to uphold, and David knew that challenging the status quo would come at a cost. Yet, as he walked towards the podium, Leah's voice echoed in his mind, urging him to transform fear into courage. Tell a story, she had said. And with that mantra, he leaned into the relief that storytelling could bring, allowing it to dispel the tension that clung to his shoulders. Good morning, David began, his voice steady despite the tremor of uncertainty beneath. He felt their eyes on him, some skeptical, others bored. Today, I want to share more than just numbers and forecasts. I want to talk about lives, real lives, influenced by the very things we manage. He opened his presentation, revealing a graphic design that combined crisp statistics about their market performance with heartfelt narratives about individuals affected by their services. The juxtaposition was intentional, a tactical choice to interlace the cold information with the warmth of human insight. As he proceeded, he told the story of a young girl named Emily who had struggled to connect with her grandmother in a nursing home. Emily was afraid her grandmother wouldn't recognize her, David recounted, feeling his heart race as he watched lingering judgment slowly shift into intrigue. But with the right initiatives like personalized care and family outreach, Emily's heartbreak turned into moments of joy. He detailed how by fostering emotional connections, the company could enhance its growth and profitability. For every story shared, he saw a spark ignite in his colleagues' expressions, challenging the preconceptions about what their business's heart could encompass. He felt the room sway with understanding, his vulnerability reframing their conversation from rigid quarterly projections to deep human resonance. Yet, as he elaborated, doubt loomed again. What if they laugh? A whisper nagged at him. But with each slide that transitioned, David pressed on, amplifying his passion like a beacon before the dark. He urged them to consider their stewardship as more than just numbers. It was about empathy, connection, and redefining what it meant to serve. The more he spoke, the clearer his vision became, not just for their company, but for himself. This was not merely a chance to persuade, this was a transformative pivot for him as a leader, a declaration that he would no longer be confined by the expectations of the past. He was growing, evolving from a figure that once feared failure into a pioneer prepared to embrace it for a greater good. As his presentation neared its conclusion, applause erupted from an unexpected corner of the room, Leah's bright smile beaming with excitement. Encouraged by her response, David felt the crescendo of his own ambition rising, propelling him toward his final statement: "Together, we can build a legacy of compassion in business. It's not just about profits, it's about meaning." The silence that followed was almost tangible, like the calm before a storm. Then, from the back of the room, a voice cut through the stillness. "David," it was Marcus, the board's staunchest traditionalist. The tension thickened, a stark contrast to the optimism he had fostered. "Do you really believe we can prioritize emotions over strategy without significant repercussions?" David's pulse quickened at the challenge. "I do," he replied, conviction tightening his features as he steadied his gaze. "But I fear what we lose if we don't try." At that moment, the boardroom transformed from a forum of skepticism to a battlefield of ideals. David's heart raced not with fear but with the raw adrenaline of standing on the edge of change, feeling the momentum of his vision share the air he breathed. What would happen next? Would he sink or swim in this confrontation? In his chest, the flame of determination flickered, ready for the fight. Marcus's penetrating stare bore down on David, the weight of tradition clashing against his resolve. The murmurs around the room suggested a brewing storm among his colleagues, each caught in their own struggle between innovation and convention. David felt that familiar twinge of doubt, but he pushed it aside, recalling every story he had woven into his presentation. They were more than mere anecdotes, they were proof of what lay at stake. "David," Marcus pressed on, his voice calm yet laced with challenge. "Yes, stories resonate, but we're not a charity. We have shareholders to consider. You're suggesting we shift our entire business strategy based on emotional appeals to consumers." The implication hung in the air like an unresolved tension. David inhaled sharply. This wasn't just about convincing Marcus, it was about standing firm in his truth. "I understand the stakes, Marcus. But if we ignore the emotional pulse of our customers, aren't we risking something far more significant? We could become just another faceless company, out of touch, irrelevant. What is the point of success if it lacks meaning?" The silence that followed was dense and expectant. David's heartbeat echoed in his ears, a frantic rhythm pushing him to continue. He searched the room for Leah's reassuring presence, and her nod ignited a flicker of courage within him. "Let me illustrate my point," he said, pivoting quickly to regain control. He pointed again to the slide featuring Emily's story, drawing their attention back to the hopeful narrative. Emily's experience wasn't isolated. Countless individuals feel unheard, overlooked. If we acknowledge their stories, we can connect with them on a level that drives loyalty and advocacy. That's not just good for business, it's transformative. He observed the slight shifts in the expressions of his colleagues' raised brows, softening eyes. Doubt still lingered, but curiosity sparked interest. David understood that trust was a fragile creature, easily fractured but immensely rewarding when nurtured. Emotions aren't a distraction from strategy, they are a guidepost. When I think of our direction, I am inspired by what we could foster, the kind of company that doesn't just provide services but enriches lives. Our brand could elicit pride, loyalty, and a fierce commitment, not just from customers, but from employees who feel a part of something greater. He was gaining momentum. As he spoke, David felt his confidence solidifying into a palpable force. "Emotion and strategy can coexist," he insisted. "We aren't abandoning objectives, we're enriching them." "David," Marcus interjected, a flicker of acknowledgement softening his voice. "You need to realize not every metric can factor in subjective measures. We have protocols, benchmarks that guide us. Exactly. David seized the moment, the hint of challenge awakening new clarity in his thought. But those benchmarks can evolve. By integrating positive emotional engagements into our analytic frameworks, we could set new benchmarks that resonate with the humanity of our consumers. We don't just serve numbers, we serve people. Let us redefine what our metrics could mean. Let us lead in a way that transforms these very benchmarks into measures of actual impact. His colleagues now leaned forward, interest glimmering behind their professional facades. The tide was shifting, their faces transformed with an eagerness that signaled a deepening engagement. Marcus regarded him thoughtfully, the sharp lines of his skepticism blurring momentarily as he deliberated the implications of David's perspective. David's heart surged with hope yet tinged with caution. He was in the throes of a pivotal moment, a moment dependent not only on how well he argued his case but on what ideals he himself was willing to embrace moving forward. As the tension in the room grew electric, he wondered if he had done enough to sway Marcus, enough to catalyze a collective shift towards new values. The path ahead felt uncertain, yet he was steadfast in his conviction. Are we ready to lead not just with our minds but with courage? David posed, sensing the urgency shift within him. The room was still, breaths awaited answers that only time would reveal. Would they embrace a new model that intertwined business with compassion, or would fear and tradition entrap them in mediocrity? In that pregnant pause, David understood that the conversation was only just beginning. The stakes were higher than he had anticipated, and the future felt both exhilarating and daunting. The question crystallized within him: could he inspire not just a room full of skeptics but a company, and perhaps even an industry, to recognize the powerful synergy between heart and strategy? With resolve settling into his bones, he smiled against the uncertainty. The fight for transformation had only just begun, and it was one he was determined to win. As the silence stretched, David felt time distort around him. Every heartbeat amplified the weight of uncertainty that loomed in the corners of the room. He had spoken with sincerity, yet he was acutely aware that eloquence meant nothing if the essence of his arguments was lost on those he was trying to reach. The skeptical gaze of Marcus remained fixed on him, challenging him to dig deeper, to unearth whatever doubt he had about his purpose. David, Marcus began again, this time with a hint of a challenge. You talk about courage and transformation, but where does that leave the bottom line? Are we ready to gamble on emotions without any firm data to substantiate your proposals? David exhaled slowly, recognizing the pendulum of anxiety swinging back toward the realm of metrics. The legitimate concern gnawed at him, yet it also brought forth a crucial realization: if his methods were to be the key to transformation, they must be anchored in something tangible. If we measure success solely by numbers, then we risk losing sight of what truly drives those numbers: our customers' emotions. Leah caught his gaze again. Her presence was a constant reminder of why this was worth fighting for. When Emily had shared her story, it had awakened something in David, a profound understanding of the actual human beings behind the statistics. He recalled the childlike wonder in Emily's eyes when she received support from the community. It wasn't just a financial transaction, it was a connection. The weight of conviction pressed upon David. Here's the thing, Marcus. Emotions don't exist in isolation. They permeate every transaction, driving loyalty and advocacy. Success isn't just about the next quarter, it's about building a legacy that resonates through time. The room's atmosphere shifted, almost imperceptibly, as murmurs began to float through the air. David could almost see the gears turning in the minds of his colleagues. He sensed both unease and potential unraveling in the folds of their reservations, but Marcus stood unmoved, clearly wrestling with a personal conundrum of his own. David recognized the internal battle reflected in Marcus's furrowed brow, a struggle between his long-standing principles and the fresh perspective David was advocating. It ignited a flicker of hope in him. Perhaps now was the moment to introduce what was truly at stake: the risk of remaining stagnant. What if we become the company that listens? The organization that evolves? David pressed on. Imagine customer testimonies becoming our benchmarks for success. What if our quarterly goals reflected not just sales figures but stories of trust restored or lives positively affected? Stories like Emily's could become case studies illustrating real, tangible impacts leading us away from mere transactional relationships. The shift in the room intensified. Faces that had been previously neutral were now showing signs of contemplation. David's heart raced with a blend of excitement and fear. This was it. He had utilized empathy to dismantle a barrier. Now it was time to inspire true change. Marcus, he continued, drawing on his well of determination, we're not discarding profit, instead, we're reimagining how profits can be generated. This is not a distraction, it's an evolution. With calculated strategies intertwined with authentic human connections, we can lead our industry, not just in numbers but in impact. But even as he positioned the vision, a lurking doubt nagged at him: would they accept a narrative that dared to redefine success? Would they trust him to guide them through this uncharted territory? The moment felt heavy with unspoken questions, yet David was resolute. He had stepped into the brave unknown before and knew he could lead them there again. A sense of urgency welled within him, a crucial pivot point not only for the company but for his own professional identity. Today, we're at a crossroads, he declared, voice steadying with determination. Let us choose to become pioneers of empathy in business. It begins here, with us. As David spoke, he could feel the atmosphere crackling with potential. Each colleague's decision hung like a fragile thread, tethered between apprehension and possibility, ready to break or bind them tighter, and then, just at the crest of hope, the door swung open, revealing a figure from the shadows, an unexpected entrance that could turn the tide. David, Leah whispered urgently. What if I told you there's been a development that changes everything? The weight of her words settled heavily as David's heart raced again. What new dimension had entered this critical moment? David's mind raced, the tension in the room escalating as Leah's enigmatic statement hung in the air. He couldn't help but feel that this was the turning point he had been yearning for. Steeling himself against the charged atmosphere, he turned his attention back to Leah. What do you mean? He asked, words spilling out with a mixture of urgency and anticipation. He noted the way his colleagues leaned in subtly, drawn to the prospect of new information like moths to a flame. It was a pivotal moment, the potential for their groundbreaking shift seemed to crackle with possibility. Leah stepped closer, lowering her voice. I just got off the phone with our biggest client. They're considering pulling their business because they don't feel valued, like they're just another number on a balance sheet. David felt a jolt in his chest. This was not just a commercial loss, it was a chance to prove that their approach was not only viable but necessary. Did they mention any specifics? He urged, sensing the opportunity. Yes, Leah replied, her expression serious. They mentioned wanting more engagement, authenticity, a partnership rather than a transaction. They're struggling with the emotional disconnect. The pieces started to click into place for David. This wasn't merely about saving a contract, it was about embodying what he had been advocating for. What if we could turn this around? He mused, excitement threading through his voice. What if we reach out with a personal approach, share stories that reflect our values and their needs? A flicker of hope danced in Leah's eyes. Do you think it could work? Absolutely, he replied, determination swelling within him. This is our chance to showcase the change we can lead. We need to gather real stories, not just metrics, we need to humanize our brand. As he spoke, a renewed sense of purpose burgeoned in David's core. He could see a clear path unraveling before him, a chance not only to alter his company's trajectory but to unapologetically align it with genuine human experience. We can create a presentation for them that captures our vision while addressing their concerns. I'll lead it, he declared, feeling a vibrant wave of confidence wash over him. David, do you really think this is the right strategy? Marcus interjected, still holding on to skepticism. What if your emotional appeal falls flat? The challenge hung heavily, but David's resolve ignited. We have to be willing to take that risk. What we've been doing hasn't been working, and we have the opportunity to redefine our narrative. It starts with authenticity, showing we genuinely care about our clients and their experiences. His colleagues were silent, contemplating the weight of his words. Leah's gaze met his, a mix of admiration and shared determination sparkling between them. It felt monumental, as though they were standing on the precipice of something transformative, but a quiet fear clawed at the back of David's mind. What if, despite their best efforts, it wasn't enough? What if he failed to inspire them, failing not only their prospects but the ideals he was fighting to instill? Let us draft an appeal that not only focuses on our abilities but how we can learn from their stories and be the partner they deserve, he pressed. If we can show that we're listening, it could change everything. He felt the palpable shift in the room, the weight of uncertainty mixing with optimism, forged from a collective yet cautious hope. It was exhilarating and terrifying all at once. As they prepared to gather for the meeting, David's thoughts buzzed with a swirl of possibilities. He was at a crucial juncture, one that would either solidify his assertiveness or mark another chapter of disappointment. Let us move forward. This is the time for change, he asserted, willing to summon every ounce of his inner strength, but as they finalized their plans, a looming question remained: could David bridge the gap between genuine connection and the harsh realities of the corporate world? With the weight of potential outcomes hanging heavy, David realized he was not just shaping a business strategy but defining who he was as a leader. And that journey was only beginning. David awoke the next morning with a surge of determination coursing through him. The previous day's meeting had ignited something within him, a flicker of ambition that combined with anxiety. He stood before the mirror, scrutinizing his reflection, tracing the contours of his own resolve. Today was pivotal, he needed to embody the change he envisioned. If he could not inspire his team, how could he hope to inspire their client? After a quick breakfast, he made his way to the office. The morning glow seeped through the windows, casting long shadows along the hallway. Inside, he found Leah already rifling through notes at her desk. Her focused demeanor buoyed his spirits. "Ready for another day of transformation?" he asked, hoping to inject energy into the air. Leah shot him a smile, one that spoke volumes. "You seemed pretty fired up yesterday. I think we're on the right track." He appreciated her support, yet doubt crept in unannounced. Would they truly break through the corporate barriers that seemed impenetrable? "We need to refine our message," he said, moving toward her desk. "I want to ensure authenticity resonates in every detail." They spent hours crafting their strategy, leaning into the vulnerable conversations they hoped to have with their client. David felt the weight of responsibility settling heavily upon him, yet exhilaration threaded his intellectual pathways as he continued. The more they dissected the client's feedback, the more determined he became to grasp their story to foster a genuine connection. As the clock inched closer to their presentation, David's pulse quickened. He studied the curated visuals and client stories they intended to share, but something gnawed at him. Were they truly capturing the emotional essence necessary to bridge the disconnect? "We're missing a personal element," he blurted, feeling a sense of urgency rising within him. "We need a story, a real story that embodies empathy. It has to be deeper than statistics and projections." Leah nodded, her brow furrowing in thought. "But we've got limited time, and the team trust me," he interrupted, caught up in the momentum of his idea. "If we dig deep, we can create a narrative that weighs heavier than any number ever could. Let us bring in the impact of our work, the very human stories of those we've helped." Leah's expression shifted as she considered his words. He could see realization dawning on her. They began to sift through previous case studies, approaching each example not as mere data points but as vessels of human experience. David's pulse steadied as he began to connect, moments where their services had transformed lives, feelings of loss and recovery all laced with the hope and struggle of the people involved. On the way to the meeting room, doubt arose again. What if their story didn't resonate? What if the emotional approach seemed contrived or insincere? David pushed the thoughts aside. He needed to elevate himself beyond the corporate facade. As they took their seats in the conference room, doubt receded to a quiet corner of his mind. The lights dimmed, and his heart raced. The moment had come to confront his fears and reveal the authenticity he had cultivated. As he started the presentation, laying bare their mission and vision with an openness that flickered with vulnerability, a striking vulnerability coursed through him. Each word spoken felt like a testament to his growth as a leader. He no longer sought validation from his colleagues but stood firmly in his belief that their brand could thrive through connection, but just as he felt everything aligning, an unexpected question emerged from the back of the room, jolting him. But what if your stories aren't compelling enough? The challenge stung doubt re-emerging like a serpent ready to strike. David gathered his thoughts, realizing he had one vital opportunity left. He needed to address not just numbers but emotions. His next words could make or break their efforts. With the future of their partnership hanging in the balance, a new resolve surged in him. It was time to confront not only their fears but his own. As he faced the room, uncertainty hovered, and David knew this was a defining moment that would determine not only the fate of their client relationship but the embodiment of the leader he was evolving into. What would he say next? Would it be enough to turn the tide toward genuine connection? David took a moment, standing at the precipice of doubt and determination, the weight of the question hanging heavily in the air. He couldn't allow himself to falter now. The success of their presentation depended on authenticity, a concept he had begun to embody in his very essence. He inhaled deeply, then spoke with a conviction that surprised even him. What if our stories aren't compelling enough? He repeated, pacing lightly while making eye contact with the assembled audience. Let us consider another angle. What resonates with people isn't always the strength of the story itself, but how the story invokes emotion, the humanity behind it. Each data point represents someone's life. Our mission is not merely to present numbers, it's to present lives transformed. As he spoke, David felt an instinctive warmth wash over him. He searched within for a story of his own, one that could evoke the depth of empathy he wanted to inspire. He recalled a moment from his past, volunteering at a community center where he met a little girl, Mia. Abandoned by circumstance but rich in dreams, she had fearlessly shared her hopes with him, expressing her wish to be an astronaut one day. Her youthful enthusiasm was infectious. The memory unfolded like a movie scene in his mind, a reminder of the impact that connection could forge. In that instant, the direction of his presentation shifted. There was a little girl I once met named Mia, he began. She reminded me that every large ambition roots itself in something small and profound. Our work is akin to nurturing those aspirations. We help people like Mia to reach beyond their struggles, just as we take clients from challenges to breakthrough moments. He could see Leah nodding in encouragement, her gaze steady. The tension in the room seemed to dissipate, replaced by curiosity and an emerging sense of connection. The audience leaned in, the looming doubt replaced by engagement, as David continued weaving a narrative that painted not just the company's statistics but the stories behind them, those that drove their purpose. The questioner from earlier, a stern-faced executive, seemed to soften. So you're saying empathy is crucial, not just for the surface but for fundamentally understanding our clients? He ventured. There was an unassuming respect in his voice that made David swell with resolve. Yes, David replied, feeling empowered. Empathy is the cornerstone that allows us to understand our clients not as just businesses, but as lives. In every pitch, in every deal, every statistic speaks to something real. Our task is to dig deeper, to humanize the process. He realized he was no longer simply standing in front of them but connecting in tangible ways. The corporate facade began melting away, revealing authentic dialogue. As he moved through each point, weaving Mia's metaphor into their mission, David delivered a presentation that brimmed with sincerity and urgency. It was thrilling. He was no longer a mere figure behind a table but a leader unearthing the emotional resonance of their services. Yet, just as he wrapped up, a challenge arose from another corner of the room, a voice dripping with skepticism. That sounds beautiful, David, but how can you assure us that this emotional approach translates to revenue? Yet another wall to confront. David felt the heat rise in his cheeks but channeled it. This was his defining moment, the test of his resolve and career shift. Our commitment to authenticity translates into trust. Trust translates into loyalty. And loyalty translates into revenue. We're not just selling a product, we're investing in a relationship, he asserted, a quiet fire igniting within him. the visuals behind him, now flickering with images of humanity intertwined with business graphics, served as testaments to transformation, the emotional weight balanced by tangible outcomes. As the presentation concluded, applause rippled through the conference room, but beneath it, David could feel a current of doubt still lurking. As conversations ensued, David stepped back, allowing the gravity of what he had just faced to settle. Had he truly turned the tide? Was his newfound vulnerability enough to forge the genuine connection he had sought all along? And then, a thought flashed through his mind: what if digging deeper into their narratives would unearth something even more profound? In the back of his head, curiosity grew, mixing uneasily with intrigue. What would the next step in this journey of authenticity demand of him? The answers awaited just out of reach, but David could feel them coalescing into clarity, urging him to uncover what lay beyond this moment. In the weeks following the pivotal board meeting, David Reyes felt a profound shift reverberate throughout the company. Fueled by his recent presentation, he integrated a new strategic framework rooted in empathy and connection. Where profits once ruled as the supreme objective, the mission now included fostering relationships, an endeavor aimed at improving the quality of life for clients and their families. Concrete metrics were developed to gauge emotional engagement alongside traditional financial indicators. For the first time, positive customer experiences were evaluated with the same seriousness as profit margins. A regular feedback loop was established, allowing clients to share their stories, thoughts, and emotions. This qualitative data began to mold decision-making processes, proving invaluable in connecting with their customer base. David's commitment to authenticity did not end in the boardroom. He actively sought connections within the community, fostering relationships with organizations like Maplewood Nursing Home. Through initiatives incorporating family storytelling, art, and personal interactions, he transformed outdated business practices into platforms for shared humanity. His admiration for Sarah's bright spirit echoed throughout the new initiatives, turning the formerly sterile corporate language into a genuine engagement narrative. The transformation did not go unnoticed. Within 3 months, client retention soared by 10%, and the company's reputation flourished as testimonials flooded in. Families expressed not only satisfaction but gratitude, sharing how the nuanced changes in the company's approach positively affected their loved ones' well-being. Employees felt elevated too, inspired by the shift in company culture toward a compassionate and collaborative environment. The most significant moment came during a company-wide meeting, where David stood before an assembly of employees. The air buzzed with anticipation, their curiosity palpable. "We have a responsibility," David addressed them, his voice steady but passionate. "We can differentiate ourselves not just as a service provider but as a partner in life's journey. Let's celebrate these changes as a team. Together, we're building bridges." As he spoke, he observed faces transforming. Some shifted toward understanding and acceptance, others shone with pride and excitement. The company was evolving, pulling everyone into a shared vision that resonated deeply. External recognition trailed closely behind. An influential industry publication featured David and the company, highlighting their unique approach to merging empathy with business success. "A beacon of change," read the headline, and as David perused the article, he felt a sense of validation wash over him. His journey from a profit-driven titan to a leader committed to purpose had not only proven successful but inspiring. With this newfound recognition, David understood that success transcended the confines of corporate achievements. He had proven to himself that embracing vulnerability and prioritizing connection were far mightier than accumulating wealth alone. The respect he garnered from his peers and colleagues became palpable, transitioning into a shared cultural ethos that encouraged innovation and compassion at every touchpoint. On the horizon lay a conference where David was invited to speak about the company's transformative journey. With excitement and determination, he prepared to share the lessons learned not just about business strategies but about the inherent value of empathy. As he stepped into the spotlight, David felt a surge of courage. "What we achieve is only as meaningful as who we become in the process," he told the audience, sharing anecdotes of challenges faced and triumphs realized. He showcased the faces of their clients and the stories they had unearthed, ultimately transforming lives. The applause surged around him like a wave, a testament to both the change he ignited within himself and the collective journey that had unfolded. He left the stage that day with a deep-rooted sense of fulfillment. David had conquered not just the business landscape but also his inner conflicts, a journey that had allowed him to manifest a legacy of compassion and connection beyond the confines of mere profits. He emerged more than a CEO, he had transformed into a leader who embodied the values he preached. As he walked off stage, a smile spread across his face. He was finally aligned with his purpose, creating change that mattered not just for him but for countless hearts. Now was the time for you to share in this journey of transformation. Subscribe immediately to the channel to be the first to catch more exclusive emotional stories like David's. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and make sure more people can feel this change. We want to hear from you, so comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support truly makes a difference in spreading these vital stories.